welcome to my third YouTube video, I guess, in my new era. I'm trying something else out. I'm filming this after filming the entire video because my intro was bad. It was rushed. Today, we're going to be talking about Clarice Beckett, who is a woman, a painter, an artist from Western Victoria, and more importantly, she has a wild history, so I really wanted to delve into that today. You may be asking, Kim, why are you making a video about an artist from the early 1900s? And you are right, why am I? The short answer is I find it really interesting, and the long answer is that I actually used to volunteer at Geelong Gallery last year, and I was invigilating her exhibition. And to invigilate an exhibition, you have to learn about the artist that you're invigilating for, and invigilating literally just means standing there, making sure nobody is touching the paintings, breathing on the paintings, sneezing, and you know, being rowdy essentially. You're basically security, but you know things about the paintings, and people come to you and ask you questions, which is why you're supposed to know about the artist and the paintings and the history, or not even paintings, but just pieces in general. So I was given a binder full of articles and information about Clarice Beckett, and I just got so interested in her life, and then I saw her work in real life and I was hooked. Her work it's truly amazing just to see in person. If you have the opportunity to go see her work in person, take it, because she has some just haunting, beautiful, like misty pieces. Like, they're just so nostalgic as well, which I do dive into the video a bit more, so I won't give too much away. But I really wanted to talk about that, take a little break from my usual content because I have 2 videos now, so I officially have a niche, and this will be my third, so this is officially already disregarding that. But yeah, I really want to talk about this. Let me know if you like it, and I'll make more, because I do have some other artists that I have ideas. I may or may not have already started writing a script for another video similar to this one. But yeah, let me know if you like it, and I hope you enjoy. So Beckett was born on the 21st of March in 1887, and she was actually born in Casterton, which is a fairly rural town, it's a pretty rural town in Western Victoria. I actually looked it up, and it's only got about 1,700 people living there even today, so at the time it would have been pretty out of the way to go anywhere. But her father was the manager of the bank, and that's actually where Clarice was born, and presumably her younger sister Hilda as well. She lived there with her mother, her father, and while it is pretty hard to find a record on him, she also had an older brother, Thomas, as well. And the reason that Thomas isn't very well documented is that he sadly passed away when Clarice was 12 years old. He unfortunately passed away of tuberculosis in the Metropolitan Lunatic Asylum in Kew. And honestly, for me, it was one of the last things that I found out about her. I knew a bunch of things about her before, and this was just a weird bombshell for me, to be honest. But he passed away at the age of 17 when Clarice was 12 years old. It is theorized that this death actually affected Clarice very heavily, and is actually the reason why she was so self-reliant, why she had such a close relationship with her parents, and why she was such a private person as well, because she very much kept to herself. And we think that that's possibly because of this obviously traumatic event that happened to her at such a young age. Yeah, she grew up in Casterton. She boarded at Queen's College in Ballarat. Her and her sister were both very well educated. Oh, this is bad. This is looking rough. I'm gonna have to sit down to fix this. I thought that I could just sketch this in and do an exact replica, but anyway. So she attended Queen's College, and while she was there, she exhibited very strong artistic abilities, and this was definitely nurtured by her parents, her father especially. He signed her up for a charcoal drawing class and encouraged her to keep going with her artistic skills. She actually worked with the tutor until they moved to South Yarra, which, if you don't know, is just a Melbourne suburb. Can't imagine that anybody from overseas is seeing this. This is where Clarice would actually finish her schooling. She would finish her schooling in Melbourne, and her parents and the rest of her family would all move back to Bendigo, and she would continue pursuing her art throughout all of these moves throughout this entire time. So this entire time she was pursuing her skills, refining her skills, finding herself, but she didn't actually have the style that we see today until she studied under one Max Meldrum. Clarice met Meldrum in 1906 through a mutual friend and artist Beatrix Holly, as she became a member of this artistic circle that was happening in Melbourne at the time. That was in 1906. In 1914, Clarice actually moved back to Melbourne to study art at the National Gallery School. And in 1919, she became the first student to ever leave the National Gallery School and study under Max Meldrum at the Meldrum School of Painting. And it is here where Beckett is influenced by Meldrum and starts to become a huge player in the tonalism movement. Oh, that's looking bad. Do you want to reveal? I feel like I've been... That's embarrassing. That's really embarrassing. This is my attempt at a landscape. Anyway, I'm embarrassed right now. I've included trees that aren't even there. I'm just gonna have to figure this out. Anyway, yeah, so she met Meldrum at school. Started studying under Meldrum at the School of Painting, and is here where she is influenced. She is influenced by Meldrum and begins painting in tonalism. 1919 is the same year that she actually painted her iconic Luna Park painting. It is also the first known painting of Luna Park, Melbourne, that has ever been painted, as it only opened about, I think what was it, 7 years earlier in 1912. So she really got in there, and that's our this is the first painting that we have of Luna Park, and it's by Clarice Beckett, which is insane. It's just so cool to have that piece of history about like Melbourne history specifically, not even just Australian history. Tonalism is characterized by this misty landscape. It's very dim, very foggy, and the reason that it's so foggy and very, toned is because it follows Max Meldrum's tone-on-tone style. It focuses on what the eye itself sees rather than fancy colors. It only focuses on composition, shape, and tone. The colors don't matter. I am using color in this painting because color matters to me, and oh my god, maybe I should have skipped it. Let's be real, what is this? Let's be so real right now. I swear I'm not a bad artist. This is just, I don't do this often. Meldrum believed that art, I'm just reading my notes directly right now. Meldrum believed that art isn't supposed to have narrative or literary aspects. It was simply supposed to be a true representation of the real world, which is a bit boring if you ask me. I believe that art is about expression and art is about the artist, not the audience. And that's how we get some truly amazing pieces. And I'm definitely not the only person that disagreed with Meldrum's philosophy. It was very controversial at the time. In fact, Melbourne artist and teacher George Bell described Australian tonalism as a cult which muffles everything in a ball of opaque density. So he was not impressed. But you know who was impressed? Clarice Beckett. Clarice Beckett continued to stay true to Melbourne's philosophy throughout her entire career, and we can see this heavily through the work that we have today. She exhibited usually with Melbourne's other students. A few of her paintings were sold, but most of them were unsold, not very popular. Wonder why. She regarded herself as a realist and remained loyal to Meldrum's teachings, though not his literal practice. And for years she would take her works for his appraisal. Most of her canvases bear his assessment A, B, or C on the back. Wild that we have that information. And is that in the Wikipedia? No, I had to go digging for that stuff. If you're researching something that you're really interested in, go to Wikipedia as an overview. Do not go to Wikipedia as a final source, because oh my god, the wiki did not include this. While painting, Beckett would actually blur or squint her eyes while moving brushes rapidly over the canvas. She didn't sketch out her subjects first, she just painted what she saw directly onto the canvas board. And she insisted on painting en plein air. As I was saying, she insisted on painting en plein air, or en plein air. It's French. I don't know French pronunciation. But she insisted on painting outside, in the elements, in real time, looking at her subjects head on. I'm not doing that. I have a reference photo because I'm not going outside. It's so hot. It's even hot in this room. She would paint for hours at a time, and it really gives this work a very real effect, because she's there in the real world and she's just painting what she sees. She's painting the urban landscape, her local towns, her local streets, and it has a very nostalgic effect to them, especially for me, because I also grew up in these areas. I didn't grow up in Casterton. Shout out Casterton. But I grew up in that suburban cityscape. It's a little bit bushy, but not really. It's very much I grew up in the city suburbs. And for me, a great example of the nostalgic aspect of her work is Beach Road After Rain. It's a simple painting of a road with trees on either side, power lines on the right side, and the entire painting has this misty effect. It's a staple of tonalism. But this road could be anywhere. In fact, it looks just like the road that my grandparents used to live on. And the hazy effect also, it looks like it's a memory. You look like you're looking at it through your past lens, through your past eyes, like it's a distant memory. You're trying to remember these scenes in your childhood, and that's exactly how I feel when I look at these paintings. Especially for me, when I try to remember scenes from my childhood, they are a little bit hazy. They are, they try to slip out of my mind, and some aspects aren't the same as they used to be. They're not in extreme detail. And I can see in my mind the same way that Clarice Beckett saw Beach Road when she was painting it. And it's a very comforting feeling. I don't think that this is an experience that only Australian children will have. I think that any children who lived in a bushy yet suburban area could probably feel nostalgic looking at these. But I do think that's definitely where I'm coming from, and it's something that, weirdly enough, that I have in common with Clarice Beckett, an artist that lived 100 years before I did. But back to Clarice's life. The same year that Clarice joined Meldrum's school, her family moved back to Melbourne, to the suburb of Beaumaris in 1922. And she actually ended up taking up the responsibility of her parents' caregiver, and she did the majority of the house responsibilities. Her parents were getting really old, really sick, and her sister at this point was married and wasn't able to contribute as much to that household, as she had her own household to look after at the time. And moving into her, not moving into her parents' house because she always lived there, but becoming her parents' primary caregiver did really disrupt her artistic endeavours. She did still exhibit with Meldrum's other students regularly, but she wasn't able to leave the house without permission, and she wasn't able to leave very often. In fact, most of the time she was actually painting in plein air from dusk, going back home during the day and taking care of her parents in the house, and then going back out. Oh, other way around. She would wake up at dawn, she would paint in plein air, and then she would go back to her home, take care of her parents, take care of the house, and then at dusk, at the end of the day, she would go back out and she would paint while there was still light. And that's so romantic. But it's sad. It's sad that she didn't have time to create her own career. This was post-World War One, so she did get to escape most of the hardships that other people were facing in post-World War One Melbourne, and honestly post-World War One everywhere, because of her status, because of the money that she was born into. But because she was a woman, she still wasn't able to pursue a solo career as an artist. She had to stay home and take care of her parents. She had to be the homemaker, because her own mother was getting so old and sick, so she had to stay home. And living with her father also didn't help, just living with him in general, regardless of how old he was, because he was not happy that Clarice was unmarried and that she wasn't interested in getting married, that she had rejected lovers, that she, oh goodness, one sec, that she had rejected lovers, that she was doing her own thing, that she was focusing on her art. He didn't love that, and even though she had asked him, hey, can I use one of the spare bedrooms of the studio space, he actually forbade her from doing that because he wanted to encourage her to find a husband, and he wanted to encourage her to find a husband and to essentially have her give up on her dream of being an artist and creating his paintings. He wasn't very supportive of her, and he didn't give her a space of her own to paint on, to paint in. She didn't have her own studio or anything like that. And even artists that do paint in plein air do fix up the details and go back over bits in their own personal studios. We even see this in modern practices today. You look up wedding painter, they'll paint up most of the scene at the wedding, and then they'll go home and they'll fix up some other issues that were with the painting that they didn't get to fix up in real time. It's a very common practice, and it's not unusual that she needed a studio to finish in, so she would actually finish up her paintings on their kitchen table, just in their kitchen, because that's all her father told her that she really needed. And that, side note, this isn't even in my notes, I just remembered this, that is actually a huge proponent to how they, or this is something that they nod to, that they reference when her work was exhibited at the South Australian Gallery of something. I'll put it on the screen. Whatever the South Australian Gallery is called, oh, that one. They actually, they had a kitchen table with her work on it to display it, which is salt in the wound if you ask me, but it's a huge part of her history, and it's a huge part of what we know about her, because what we know about her is quite limited, because she lived 100 years ago. So she's painting on her kitchen table, her dad isn't happy about it, she barely has time to do anything, but she still manages to produce heaps of artwork. She mostly works on these small pieces, which is why I have a 10 by 10 right now that I'm trying to emulate. I think that I'm fixing the painting, by the way. Update on this, I think it's getting fixed. I think I'm doing something with it. So I did mention earlier that she rejected suitors left, right, and center, which she did. I'm not wrong. But there is a theory that she actually had a secret lover due to her 1927 painting October Morning, which is definitely more of like a portrait style than any of her other work. It's a picture of a painting of a street, a very narrow street, with a very mysterious man or male figure just standing there right in front of her. And yeah, it is theorized this was her secret lover, that she, you know, snuck away to go meet him. I don't think that's true, personally. That's just my own speculation. That's not based on any research, it's just vibes. But I also love the idea of a 100-year-old drama between like an upper class artist who can't get her own career and a man that her father doesn't approve of, but also her father desperately wants her to get married. I have no idea if she had a secret lover or not. It's not anywhere in any research or anything like that. But I do love the idea of that drama, like that 100-year-old drama. That's just too good. And yeah, that is a theory that some people have, especially regarding that painting. I don't see any other paintings with the mysterious man in it, at least not in my own personal research, which just leads me to believe that this man was a neighbor of hers, or maybe even possibly a painting of her father. We just simply do not know who this man is. He could be literally anybody. He could be a woman wearing men's clothing. Like, we have no idea, which just makes it all the more interesting to me, honestly. But I personally am of the opinion that it's probably just a neighbor. She does paint random people in her work all the time, in her landscapes. Like, she paints what she sees. So if there's somebody interrupting her view, she'll just paint them. They are her view now, which I honestly think it's beautiful. It's one of the aspects that I love about her work, is that it's real. It's real. It's what she sees. It's real. It's beautiful. It's amazing. You're a model. Now, this is where the story does take a bit of a turn. On the 3rd of July in 1935, Beckett stood outside painting in Beaumaris, and a storm hits. She's determined to finish her paintings, and she just stood out in the storm, in the cold, in the rain, and just continued. And she stood out there for so long before deciding to come back to shelter that she actually got very sick straight away. She got very gravely ill. She was transported to a hospital in Sandringham, where she stayed for a few more days before she finally passed away, sadly, on the 7th of July in 1935 at the age of 48. Just a year after her mother had also passed away. I don't really have a lot of information on how her mother passed. Old age, maybe. But following her death, her father and her sister held an exhibition of her work. What a fake bitch. I was not going to swear in this video, but what a fake bitch that the dad was. He's, for real, his treatment of her ultimately led to her death. She didn't have a room of her own. Shout out Virginia Woolf. She didn't have a room of her own. And she didn't have anywhere else to paint. She didn't have a space to paint in. She was so desperate to kind of escape from her life that she just stood at, like, the painting was her thing that she loved to do. And I truly believe that she could have lived much longer if she had somewhere in her house to escape to and finish her paintings. We don't know exactly what painting this was. I don't even know if we still have this painting that she did. That was her final piece. But it's just so... the treatment that she got when she lived at home, and the refusal of a space, a room, it ultimately led to her death. And it's honestly something that I think about all the time. Like, when I found out that her dad held the exhibition, when I first had to look her up, it's one of the first things I found out about her. I was like, what a fake bitch. What a fake bitch. But she sadly passed away. Like I said, she passed away. Oh, she passed away? Aww. Alright. Virginia Woolf, who was writing at the same time that Beckett was alive and painting, she wrote this book, A Room of One's Own, which directly talks about the importance of having a space and how women are very commonly the ones that don't have this space to express themselves that men do. And unfortunately, this is still something that we see today, thankfully at a much lesser extent. But it's honestly a wild connection to me that Virginia Woolf was writing about this at the exact same time that Clarice Beckett was living it. This wasn't a theory. This was something that was actively happening, and she was completely spot on about, which is just wild to me. But after Clarice's death, all of her paintings were put in a shed by her sister and forgotten. Nobody was willing to put effort into her legacy, and Clarice faded into obscurity. It was was the mid-1960s when curator and art historian Dr. Rosalind Hollenrake was drawn to some moody, haunting landscapes. Can you tell I just took a break and I'm way more calm? Moody, haunting landscapes. Signed, C. Beckett, that she'd seen in some private collection, or that she'd seen in a private collection. Dr. Hollenrake was on a quest to find forgotten and unloved women Australian painters and bring them back into the public mind. She had a particular interest in finding women painters, as she'd noticed when living in London and New York that there simply weren't a lot of women painters in that public sphere, and she felt compelled to do something about it. She had a small gallery at the time and was determined to display these female artists who had gone unnoticed and unloved by time. So the anonymity of these paintings intrigued her greatly. She says that while she didn't know those paintings were by a woman, she felt it. She describes the work that she'd seen as spine-tingling and that she was haunted from the moment she'd seen them. And here's a quote from an interview that she did at Geelong Gallery in April last year. I wish I could have gone, but anyway. She said, "They hung in my mind like holograms. They left footprints on my mind." So she was obsessed when she saw these paintings, obsessed, and honestly same. The owner of the collection who had inherited them, and he had no idea who the artist was. Hollenrake had asked him and he was like, "I inherited it. I have no idea." So she asked around. Nobody in 1960s Melbourne could tell her who this was. Nobody had any idea. So she just kind of assumed that C. Beckett was an American painter. And while she never stopped thinking about C. Beckett, she was still on her quest to find lost Australian painters and was very much focusing on running her gallery and lots of things. So that was in 1965, that's when she saw that painting in the private collection. It was in 1970 when she was talking with her friend Keith Dunstan, who was a journalist and the writer of A Place in the Sun, which was a very popular article at the time. And he writes a piece talking about Hollenrake's gallery, saying that she was looking for forgotten and unloved painters. He tells her that he will not write that she's specifically looking for women painters because nobody will come through her door. He says that to her. And obviously we know now that that is not true, but at the time was probably not the boldest statement to make. And who reads this article? None other than Hilda Mangan, formerly Hilda Beckett. She reveals that C. Beckett is in fact her sister, who passed away 30 years prior. Wild, 30 years has gone by. Hilda walks into Hollenrake's gallery with more of Clarice's unframed paintings wrapped in some brown paper. Rosalind recognizes these works immediately as C. Beckett. In fact, Hilda even says, "Do you know who painted these?" And she goes, "That's C. Beckett." Hilda says, "How do you know it's C. Beckett? These aren't even signed." And Rosalind was like, "I would recognize those paintings anywhere." 5 years have gone by, and she goes, "I know that's C. Beckett." And then Hilda obviously reveals that it was C. Beckett and that she was C. Beckett's sister, Clarice Beckett. That she was Clarice Beckett's sister, that she'd passed away, and tells her a little bit about Clarice Beckett's life. She also tells her that there is a shed with 2,000 more paintings on a farm near Benalla. Benalla. Disgusting. Now, I was desperate to find an account of what the shed looked like and how the paintings were kept, and the only account that I could find was... And the only account that I could find happened to be the live recording of Rosalind Hollenrake's interview with Lisa Sullivan at the Geelong Gallery. Honestly, the most amazing resource that I found while researching this video. Truly brought this whole thing together. I almost didn't listen to it because it's 40 minutes long, but I'm so glad I did. So much of this information has come from that interview. You can truly tell how much she values Beckett's work, how much she cares for Beckett's work and to keep her legacy alive. I feel like some people would get annoyed that they were just associated with one thing that they did, but the way she talks about Beckett's work is so beautiful, it's so compassionate. She's truly invested in this artist's life, and you can definitely see that with the way that she displays her work and talks about her work and talks about her journey. It's just an amazing story. Yeah, the shed, the shed, which is probably one of the most interesting aspects of this story to me. The shed was originally used to milk cows and was only enclosed on 3 sides. It was made from gum logs, and it also had a corrugated iron roof, just that really classic farm town look. You've probably seen 1,000 sheds just like it, except there were rows and rows of paintings. And because these paintings were open to the elements, not only just the elements, but local, rodents, animals, possums, insects, things like that. Most of these paintings were destroyed by the time Rosalind and Hilda got there. And Rosalind even describes the site as traumatic, as a really intense traumatic experience, seeing this like carnage essentially of 2,000 paintings just absolutely destroyed, and most of them completely beyond repair, like unsalvageable. The shed was left in the care of Hilda's daughter and her husband, and they did not care for the paintings at all, as we know, because they were just left in the shed. But Hilda's son-in-law actually had used some of the boards that Clarice had painted on to nail them. He'd nailed them to the side of their house to stop foxes and possums and other animals going underneath their house through their stumps. Truly disgusting, like truly. In the recording of Rosalind Hollenrake saying that, you can hear the crowd gasp, and I did too. I still can't really comprehend it now. These beautiful paintings used as wood, essentially, just used as basic wood from the 1930s all the way up until the 60s. It was just awful. By the end, only 369 works were salvageable, and those were the ones that were rescued by Rosalind and Hilda from the farm and put into a collection at Rosalind's gallery out of 2,000. 369 out of 2,000 paintings, probably more than 2,000. This is my Library of Alexandria. This is my Roman Empire. And Rosalind and Hilda ended up putting on 2 exhibitions, not only with this work that was found from the shed, but also works from Hilda's private collection that it also wasn't taken care of the best, but definitely better than just being left out in the elements to survive. So they put on these 2 big exhibitions, and that is what really propels Clarence into the modern sphere again. And Dr. Hollenrake's life changed forever after these exhibitions. Now she is synonymous with the story of Clarice Beckett, and if you look at Clarice Beckett's work, you'll find that Dr. Hollenrake is referenced very often, because she is the reason that we have Clarice Beckett today. And it's just amazing that she was so drawn to these paintings. She was haunted by these paintings. She couldn't stop thinking about them. And it's amazing that Hilda saw this ad and went, I have a sister artist who has been forgotten and unloved in the common sphere, and showed up. And Dr. Rosalind just knew that it was by C. Beckett, and then also just knew from the energy of the painting that it was a female painter. She said that obviously there was no way for her to know, but she knew. It's just an amazing story. Like, do you not just feel something when you hear that? Previously, I mentioned that she sold very few paintings in her lifetime. She was unable to pursue a career due to her sex and the constraint of her parents. Now, thanks to Dr. Hollenrake, Beckett's piece, The Boat Shed, sold for $331,000 at a live auction in 2021. It was when it was previously kept in an old milking shed, just waiting to be found. This story makes me think about the thousands of artists who have faded into obscurity or never got to make a name for themselves in the first place, especially during a time of great hardship like the early 20th century. We are truly lucky to know Clarice Beckett's name and her story. I am going to finish up this painting, and then I want to talk to you just very quickly about another artist. So I will take a quick break. This is where we're at. I have fixed it up. Oh, she does not look that good on camera. She looks better in real life, trust me. I'm gonna fix her up, show you the finished result, and then I'm gonna talk about another artist, and then we'll wrap up. I wanted to end this video by showing you a painting from my great pop. He was a very creative man who painted, did woodworking, played multiple instruments, and also taught me the proper way to eat an ice cream, which is just a cone on either end. Basically just 2 ice creams in one. He was truly a genius ahead of his time. But this piece in particular is actually hanging up in my mum's lounge room. It was painted in 1980. 3 years before my mum was even born, and it's just this beautiful piece of a farm landscape. We can see the classic tin roof, these beautiful gum trees, the red dust road, and my personal favorite touch is the way that he painted wispy clouds. He painted in oils and used a fan brush to add a touch of white to the blue sky as it was drying, allowing the paint to mix together on the canvas. It also inspired me to paint my clouds the same way, though I use a small flat brush. I thought that I would include that because, you know, he was not a famous artist. He was not even a full-time artist or anything. He was just a regular man who loved to paint. He's very inspiring. He's a very creative person, and a lot of members of my family were also artists, creatives, and I think that that's just, it's an amazing thing to just be able to create and be a creative person, even if you don't get super famous and get exhibited in your own gallery. But I wanted to bring him up just to kind of cherish that memory and say that, you know, he is also gone, but I wouldn't say that he is unloved. And if you also have an older artist in your family who maybe has passed away or is passing away, to just cherish those moments that you have with them, and also to cherish those beautiful works that they have, because you never know really what will happen in the future, and you never know what will happen to them in the future. And while this painting is highly regarded by my family, and members of my family have been like, I want to take the painting, no, I want to take the painting, it is really sad that didn't happen with Clarice, and that her artwork was not regarded as highly as my great pops was, at least not in our own families. But that is all I have for today's video. If you liked it, please let me know, because this was a lot of effort and I crave validation. I want to do more of these types of videos about other Australian artists, so stay tuned for that as well. I'll also continue to, you know, do my regular stuff, documenting weight loss and things like that, but I just wanted to take a little break because I really wanted to talk about her. I want to talk about Clarice so much. And I'm still just, you know, finding my feet and deciding what I want to make. Hopefully this was still interesting. Have a great day. Here is the final product. She is drying. I'm definitely going to go back over her again and maybe post it on Instagram, but ooh, she's thick, sorry. Yeah, you can see she's so, wow, she's wet. I just finished her like 2 minutes ago. And I'm definitely going to do some more details later on. That's the painting, that's the video. Please let me know if you liked it. And if you're still interested in Clarice's story, I highly recommend checking out any of the resources that I'm going to link in the description, because yeah, I have references. And I'm going to put the recording of Dr. Hollenrake and Lisa Sullivan at the top, because it is truly an amazing resource to actually hear the way artists and curators talk about the art. as an insider perspective. It's amazing. So I definitely recommend checking that out if you want to dive deeper into the topic. But thank you so much for checking this out. Oh my god, I hope that this turns out well. Yeah, bye.